the first team that we thought that we would just explore these questions were with kind of at the curriculum at the level, which is kind of where Tammy and Petra have been looking at, where you've kind of been observing a lot of different experiments going on. And so maybe what we could do is start with the two of you, and then we can turn and talk to Tammy and Caitlin, and then Monterey and Rebecca. And Monterey, I think I just saw Monterey come in. Was that who joined us? Hi, Monterey.
Hi.
So maybe what we could do, and if we would just kind of move the camera closer to Petra and Tammy, and we walk into some questions together, okay? And if you can look toward the camera, then because I'm here, even though I'm up on that big screen up there, that way we can kind of. And so really, as you saw digs being implemented in Woodcrest in different ways, how did you see that changing the teaching practices within the teams that you're overseeing? How did you see change happening? What was that change that you began to sense and began to see?
You know, the biggest change, I'm sure Tammy would agree with me, is the engagement, the pure engagement and delight on not only the students' faces, but the teachers as well. And that engagement or delight was contagious. And it really did. There were lots of questions being asked by other team members. You know, how are you doing this? What does this look like? You know, lots of wonderings, I guess.
And even by our teacher aides as well, who were supporting the process. They had lots of wonderings and how they could implement it next year and those sorts of things as well.
And so when you began to see this engagement happening and these wonderings appearing, how did that feel for you?
It's exciting.
It was. It really excited us. It then started making us think bigger. And it really helped us drive our curriculum planning for next year. And in terms of creating those like the units based around big ideas and wonderings leading into next year, where we're actually, we've developed units with all of our teachers around the concept of wonder.
And what was the part that when you began to see the engagement, what was the reason that you saw that engagement? What do you sense was the reason behind that? That engagement and excitement that you began to see?
It gave the teachers freedom, and it let them explore not only their passions, but it enabled them to build relationships with the kids, because they then understood what the kids' passions were, what their wonderings were. So it really helped build really strong relationships within each of those classes.
Just exploration, like kids were coming back from lunchtime with questions about, you know, the natural world, and it just prompted great conversations in our classrooms that were engaging for all of our students.
And it's wonderful walking around the playground now and you see these little preppies that are, oh, that's a cumulus nimbus up in the sky, and the language that our students are using throughout the school is just gobsmacking. So
can we walk into a little bit more about that impact on the students themselves? Because we talked about how as teachers, you sense the teachers being freed and being energized, and that the students began to see wonder. But what's that impact that you're seeing then on the students?
I guess it's just the wonder.
Yeah, the curiosity. The kids want to learn about new things and the world around them, but it's not just curriculum-based things, but authentic, meaningful things that are applicable to their everyday life.
Like I know the preps were sharing their dig the other day, and kids that were learning about the clouds after they had heard the rainbow group present their new learnings, they all were wondering about rainbows and wanted to know why the colours were that way, and they wanted to find out more information about different topics. Yeah.
It almost feels like it was kind of infectious, because one curiosity actually sparked another curiosity somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it.
And so given that you're seeing this sense of bubbling, right? There's this bubbling of this potential energy, of this curiosity and wonder. what are you both wondering about in the next year?
We're wondering how it can continue to be infectious and how we can support the teachers on their journey.
So we've started by putting it into our unit plans for some of our year levels, and that's how we're starting our units. A week of wondering about, you know, for example, year ones are doing biological sciences and they're wondering about living things, those sorts of things. So we've tried to implement it in our unit plans to start off the term. So I'm wondering how that'll work out, and yeah, I'm excited.
And so what other wonders are you walking into?
We're wondering, I would love to know whether we can actually spread this infection and have a whole team, a whole year level. They're doing these amazing little experiments across the entire grade. And you know, we're nearly there with some of our grades, and we had, we've just come back from a long day at the markets yesterday where our entire year 4 team took their wonderings and actually presented to an authentic audience where they sold their products that they've created to the entire community. So I'm wondering how we can take that to the next level and really engage the kids in these deep, higher order questions and make them question themselves and the things around them. But just spreading that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. That was a great summary. Any other thoughts before we move on?
I think so.
No, there's a lot swimming around in my head. There's so many ideas. There's so many. I'm loving seeing the teachers take the concept of the dig and the wonderings and the curiosity and create their own, you know, implement it in their classroom with their own spin. And
for the students.
Yes. And the excitement is everywhere.
And are you sensing then that is really changing the culture?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. We've only got 3 days left of school this year, and everyone's still so excited.
Yeah.
So that speaks volumes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. That was a great overview and great summary. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Did I just see Caitlin come in?
You did. So we also have Beck joined us as well.
Oh, good. Well, who would like to go? Who would like to go next?
Yeah,
You guys good to go?
Yeah.
Okay, the prep team. So hey, so Caitlin, just so you know what we're doing here, we're just going and kind of looking at, we're taking a pause to do a kind of a reflection on this whole journey over the term. And so this is kind of allowing us to kind of take a pause, listen to each other, and create something that's in a sense like an artifact that we can then use as a touchstone as we go into the next year. So we can go back and remember what it feels like to be at this point in time after this wonderful summer break that you're all going to be walking into. And so this is where we're just going to ask some questions just about this experience that we've walked into and the impact. And so that's where we'd kind of like to start with both of you sharing from your perspective, particularly working with preps. How did this work with DIGS, this framework, this learning cycle framework, how did that change or enhance how you thought about teaching?
Well, I think it promoted that the kids have a love of learning, and that needs to be enhanced and supported, because what can blossom from that is enormous. But also not to underestimate our kids. They actually can get concepts that are quite beyond at their level, but yeah, we don't need to sugarcoat it or baby it at the end of the day, because we've got some amazing language.
Did that surprise you, Caitlin, that that the students could actually excel beyond what we expected them to be able to do?
I'd like to say it didn't surprise me, but it did. Yeah, it definitely did. I'd like to say that I had high expectations, but it just re-kicked that up into the forefront that they can go beyond. Not some, it's not in writing and stuff, but in the language and oral and creating aspects, they definitely can. Yeah.
And Kelly, how about you? How did the work within the experimentation in using the DIG framework with preps, how did that change how you thought about your teaching practices?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Caitlin said. I think it's not that we underestimate what they can do, but I think we just need to totally get rid of that barrier between us and them and open it up. I think how the DIG was framed, it did make it appropriate. So the way we framed it with their wonderings, it's going to be age appropriate because they're the ones coming up with the questions. And so I think the way that the framework is amazing because it starts with them and we're facilitating it. But in the end, they were owning it. Everything, they were owning it. We were really stepping back, and that's what delighted me so much, is that at the start we were kind of helping them a lot more, but we really stepped back. And especially their artifacts, they came up with all of those ideas, and also the presentation was just amazing. A lot of the kids really stepped up, a lot of the shy ones as well that I didn't expect. But it just shows you when you're passionate about something, that's it. You don't really, I don't know, I guess you don't really feel as shy, or you're just really excited. And I think that was contagious as well. All the kids wanted to share, they loved sharing. Yeah, I think the engagement was just amazing. And especially those disengaged students, to see them rise is just my highlight, really.
And so, one of the things that we sometimes talk about is claiming the authentic voice, that we're often, when you find something that's passionate about that you want to share it, we all speak with a much more confidence because we're talking about something that's important to us. And it sounds like you were sensing some of that authentic voice emerging, particularly from kids who may have been reticent in the past.
Absolutely.
And how did it make you feel as a teacher to see that emerge, that in places that you normally, they weren't seeing it before, that passion and that love of learning and the engagement emerge? How did that make you feel as a teacher?
Amazing. Just amazing.
Wonderful.
It was just bliss, really. Yeah, it was new as well to see them all so excited about the same thing. I guess everyone has their own interests, so usually when you're teaching, maybe more students are more engaged than others. But this was just, everyone was engaged. Everyone loved doing the DIG, and like I said, they were owning it. They would come up to me and say, can we get the iPads and take photos of the clouds? Like, I didn't have to remind them. It was just like, it was always on their mind. Wednesday afternoons was DIG time, and they just loved it. So yeah, no better feeling, really.
And so when you actually look at the students themselves, what's the impact that you saw on the kids themselves when they could kind of own that learning process itself? So they were learning because of their own curiosity, not because they were just simply learning what others had told them they should be learning. What was the impact that you began to see on the kids themselves?
Well, I just had a small snippet when we were doing our research. Because they were doing so and they were interested, they were grabbing the books and reading, just reading, because they wanted to find the information. It wasn't a task, it wasn't because they had to, it was, they wanted to know the information, so they were sitting there, they were figuring out what each word said. So that's, yeah, but you'd have more.
Yeah, like we've been saying, they're so excited, they're so engaged, they're happy, they're passionate. 5 and 6 year old, which is so cool to see.
And at the end of term 4 as well.
Yeah, And so I also wonder from this, I would have loved to have done a second dig with them now that they understand how it works and how there were all different types of artifacts. Every artifact was different. So I really wonder how they would go a second time around and if they would thrive even more, because I think it's built up some of their confidence, definitely, with sharing and with coming up with the ideas. And yeah.
And did you sense that they were becoming more confident as storytellers?
Yeah, I'm thinking back to the sharing, particularly one group, the main speaker was away and the teacher aide who was on their group, she hasn't done a dig before. So she was always saying, is this right? Is this right? And I said, you know, it's always going to be right. Just let them own it. And she really did. And yeah, their key speaker was away and she was a bit worried and the rest had to really step up. And they did. We were so surprised. Yeah, it was amazing. So I think it has definitely improved their confidence with sharing and hopefully telling their stories.
Right. And so as you're thinking about next year, what are your wonders? You talked about your wonders about being able to have done multiple digs within term 4. What are the wonders that you have as you think about your next year?
Well, I'm wondering of those kids that Kelly has in her class this year who are going to be in my class next year, what, when we do a dig, what ownership they'll take of it and if they'll stand up in a group or how that, will they teach the others the process or, you know, because they're not going to be all together next year. So I'm curious.
Yeah.
But,
I'm also very curious about that and just to see if they are any more confident and just to hear their stories reflecting on it, I guess. And I know in my class, I'll probably get those children to introduce it if we do another dig. Yeah, and just see how they go and their little reflection.
Wonderful. Any other thoughts about why this was an important experience for you? Personally, how about on a personal level? Was this important for you, and if so, why?
It wasn't important for me because I was feeling a little bit, I don't know the right word, but about teaching, the seeing lots of kids disengage, that was getting really hard to see. So this is really exciting, this process and this type of learning has really excited back that teacher positivity and all that didn't really make sense. But I'm excited about teaching kids and being excited about learning and that it is possible even with all the curriculum and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Thank you, Caitlin. And Kelly, how about you on a personal level? Was this important for you to do this work, to walk into these experiments with your kids?
Yeah, it definitely was. And the whole thing was an experiment. So we were learning, the students were learning, and we learned so much of them. We learned so much of 5 and 6 year olds. So it really did make me rethink different ways that I can change my pedagogy and have the students have more of a voice. I think I'll always open up every topic with questions and letting the students, what do they know, what are they curious about. It's made me wonder what I'm curious about as well. I feel like I'm asking a lot more questions. And yeah, just, I guess, seeing how easy it is to really motivate them. And I know I'm talking about the students again, but it has made me rethink how I want to teach. So it's definitely been important.
Well, thank you. Thank you both so much. And your work with the preps has been certainly inspiring a lot of people beyond the walls of Woodcrest. Your story has been carried far and wide already. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And Rebecca and Monterey, are you still at the end of the table?
Yeah, go,
Thompson, before we move to Monterey and Rebecca, Kelly just brought some learning, some reflections from the students in prep.
Oh,
Share
good.
those now.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to hear those.
Okay, I've just picked out some different ones. So I tried to set it up with the 3 questions: what surprised me, what delighted me, what do I wonder? Which was a little tricky because they were doing the writing and it was, week 9. But a couple of them, a girl said, what surprised me? When I shared the big word. And I said, what was that? And she said, deforestation. So that surprised her. Delighted me when we collected things. Surprised me that they did a rainbow in a jar. Delighted me when I made a moon. Surprised me that we got to look at the clouds. What else? What delighted me? Putting the wool on the poster. They just loved making their posters. They just loved it. What was another one? Yeah, what delighted me when I shared with my friends. So that a lot of them did talk about sharing. The one that did deforestation, another one said, surprised me. I tried to word it in what's something you did or found out that you didn't think you would. And that would be using marshmallows. That was for their, the artifact. Delighted me when I put together the house, and what do I wonder? How will the trees grow back? So I think that's something that is deeper learning, because they more talked about how the trees were cut down and their purpose, but I don't think they touched on how the trees would grow back. So that was a really good wonder from this boy. Yeah, that's just a snippet of some of them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kelly. Those are great.
We'll take some photos of those and send them through.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Hey, Rebecca. Hey, Monterey. So again, you had this wonderful experiment of taking the year 1s and year 7s together and thinking about how to walk that in to create a learning experience that not only empowered the year 1s, but also deepened the learning of the year 7s. And this was, there was a lot of powerful lessons that came out of this experiment. And so I'd like to start with you with that same question to begin with. How is it that this work that you've done with this framework, this DIG framework, and experimented with it in the ways that you have, really changed or enhanced how you've thought about teaching in your own teaching practice?
I feel that definitely this year I had quite a low cohort. So going through this process of the DIG really definitely showed me to remove those stigmas and barriers and know that their curiosity can take them, and if they do have that passion and that wonder, that they are going to go down that route. They are going to try a lot harder. They are going to follow that passion and ask a lot more questions and be more willing to share and express that with me as the teacher as well. Definitely opened up a lot more avenues for the rest of the year. We could always link back to it. It definitely showed a lot of cross-curricular links happening. So we could incorporate it in our writing. We could incorporate it into our math. There was just so much, cross-curricular and opportunities for kids that are still struggling to even read and write. So.
Thank you, Rebecca. And Monterey, how about for you?
I think it was an interesting experience, because I think a lot of the time as a teacher, you go in, you're hoping you can uncover the talents and skills of these students, and then you find that you spend 80% of your time shoving information down their throat. So with this framework, it's very different. It's more aligned with what at least with what I feel teaching is meant to be. and how teaching is actually supposed to just like support the development of these children as opposed to like, you know, just filling them with all this information that you think is important. So yeah, I think just the whole framework allowed me, I think, to be more reflective of the other things that I do in class as well, and how that might kind of sometimes stifle the kids, because in that process they really opened up, they really like excelled, and it makes you understand maybe how your other practices are not necessarily doing that.
Wonderful. And so for both of you, what surprised you most as you did through your experiment that you did when you brought the year 1s and 7s together?
Definitely surprised me how their passion in previous years, when we talk about just like material, like science and materials, like they do usually have a very large interest in science. It's one of their favorite subjects. However, with this particular subject in materials and what things are made of, they're kind of just, you know, whatever. It's kind of just there. They don't actually think about it. So this definitely surprised me how much that sparked their interest, and how the Year 7s nurtured that and took them as far as they wanted to go, really.
And for you, Monterey, what surprise was there for you?
I think what surprised me most was that, so the class that I have is the Catalyst class, and they're extremely bright cohort, I think, particularly even compared to like other Catalyst classes I've taught in the past. So it really surprised me when they were challenged by maybe seemingly really simple things. Just like, it always gets me how much they struggle to explain like simple concepts like stability. But then I think, yeah, it just kind of made me reflect on like how we maybe capture some of their ability, like their ability to do things is like often removed from like context. So when you do put them in a context of explaining something to year 1, it's actually quite a difficult thing to do. And a lot of them, they did rise to the challenge. Like they really did get it in the end. But maybe, yeah, it just surprised me that was something that they would struggle with. I didn't anticipate that.
Do you sense that their learning was deepened by this process of working with and explaining these concepts then to the younger children?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think it's not, you can't just regurgitate what you like read in a book. You actually have to understand the context of the situation, which I think is really interesting. It like helps them, like I've been thinking about like how it really helps them like be problem solvers, where you can't, when somebody's like asked to like solve the spread of COVID, you don't just like ask them to do it outside the context of like a specific community. Like it has context. So like we're asking the children to do this, and it just makes sense. It makes like very real life, I think. Yeah.
And so what delighted the two of you as you went into this, from this experiment that you did together?
Definitely delighted me with how they just welcomed the Year 7s as well. They definitely were really nervous. I had a lot of students in my class that were like, oh, not really sure if I want to work with them. And I just kept reminding them, see them as the mini teacher, but also like, you know, they're a student just like you. They've been in your shoes. So yeah, it delighted me how much they just embraced it and just gave it a go anyway, even though they were really in the unknown, and they just took it.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think it was so warming to see like the Year 7s and the Year 1s forming friendships and being really open to each other. Yeah, even for those students that I thought it wouldn't be an easy thing for them to develop friendships with like younger children, yeah, and to try. But I think, yeah, it just really delighted me to see how much effort they put in and how serious they like took somebody else's education. Like, okay, like the Year 1 need to understand this, and they took that quite seriously. And yeah,
it kind of put things in perspective for the Year 1s as well. So I noticed I was walking through the classroom, we just mainly walked around. We didn't really interact too much because we wanted them to drive it. It was really interesting to see like the Year 1s would ask a question and the Year 7s would kind of be stumped, and they were like, I actually don't know that, let's find out. And they would bring up their phones or their computers and start researching. And so it was really good and delightful for Year 1s to see you know, not everyone knows the answer. They can't just get it off the top of their head. It's okay to be like, oh, I actually don't know. Let's find out together. So.
Wonderful. And so for both the year ones and year sevens, as they did this dig together, they walked into that experience together, what's the impact that you saw on your students from having done that, gone into that experience of the dig, where they went through this learning cycle together with others?
Probably the impact on my class was there's definitely so many more questions being asked. It wasn't just believing what was coming out of my mouth as the teacher. They were, why is that happening? What do you mean by that? How's that happen? So it was definitely impacted my pedagogy because I had to be prepared to have those questions and also know within myself that it's okay to just be like, actually don't know, let's find out together. So like taking, I suppose, a page out of the year sevens book and going, actually don't know, let's find out, and letting that be driven. So yeah.
And how about for the year sevens?
I think I feel like there was a lot of things, but the first thing that comes to my head is they're a lot more aware of other people in the school, like that their learning is like, can be extended. Because I know another opportunity came up to kind of do an induction for the new year sixes, and they were so excited about it, and they wanted to tell them all these things, and they actually ended up making a video for like future tips for like the new Catalyst class. And so I think they've just gotten into this mindset that like a lot of the things that they are doing are like bigger than themselves, which I think is really yeah, it's great to see.
And changing their level of engagement?
Yeah, I think so. I think the hard thing is like kind of going back sometimes to maybe a more traditional classroom and trying to like balance what that looks like, and that's why like questioning my other practices. So yeah.
And so as you think about the next year, the next school year coming up, what are you each wondering about as you think about how to take what you've learned from this term and to apply it to next?
I'm definitely excited having preps that have already done a dig, and again, possibly collaborating with Monterey and her students, and how we can incorporate, definitely wondering how we can incorporate it next year, knowing what we have planned ahead and having that background and that experience and knowing how we can change that and make that better for the next one.
Wonderful, thanks. And how about you, Monterey?
Yeah, I think I'm wondering something very similar, like how we can continue collaborating with the primary school, and maybe like, I don't know, because we kind of did it quite quickly this time.
Yeah.
So maybe like how can we align it a bit more closely with the primary school? And I think also like maybe how to capture what they did and learned, and like what like level of achievement, because I think sometimes we have to be able to capture that. So I think I know like Penny showed us an example before about like how certain aspects are captured like in these digs or like problem-based learning. So yeah, thinking about like how we can capture what they learn and how far they've come from before they started.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for reflecting with us. So do we still have is Petra and Tammy still here?
Yes.
You guys still here? Hey, so you guys are listening and working with a lot of teachers, and you just heard these two teams talk about their experiments. What surprised you about what you just heard?
That's a good question.
I
think it's, because we've been, I guess, going along the journey with them, I think we've been surprised. I think our surprise, I guess, is very similar to what the teachers have experienced themselves. What like the kids can learning beyond their expectation. Like sometimes we need to lift that. This is a low grade, this is a low cohort, and actually lift our expectation and say, hey, you know what, these kids all have potential, they're all curious, they're all learners. How can we nurture that? And And the girls have done a fabulous job in really doing this and bringing out the best in their kids. So it's been a beautiful surprise.
And I think for me as well, it's those disengaged learners. Like I've been in many classrooms over our primary and seeing how disengaged they are. However, when it came to this process, some of those kids, you know, they were pulling me over. Mrs. Wood, come and see what we've learned. And even in the playground, when they're running around playing and you walk through and they pull you over because they want to talk to you about something that they've learned. That's really special, I think, especially starting from such a young age. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all. And thank you for being a part of this journey. This was all an experiment. And we all kind of courageously walked into it. And I think that there's obviously a lot more for us to unfold, and looking forward to see what the next term might bring forth. What plants have been planted in the garden, and how that garden is going to continue to evolve. So thank you all. Thank you all for being a part of this.
Thank you.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. So I'm going to flip the camera around to over to Penny.
Oh, here I thought I was going to get out of it.
Given what you just was, you were the one who was the courageous person. You sensed something in Dayton when you visited Dayton with David. You decided to bring this framework into your leadership team, and then into your class and to your teachers. Listening now to their stories and knowing the courage that it took for you as a leader to bring this experiment, this framework into your school. How does it make you feel to hear these stories?
Oh, look, every time we've gotten together, you know, it's very encouraging. For me, I've been on a journey for the last couple of years to really challenge people to remind themselves why they got into teaching and that passion for teaching. And I have seen it, you know, teachers lose that passion for teaching, and you know, it's been mentioned quite a bit today, the student engagement in the classrooms with the last, say, 7 years of the way that Queensland has approached the teaching of the Australian curriculum. Lots of teachers were de-skilled in their creativity, or lost their creativity. And I think for me this year, I've just seen the excitement come back into the teachers. I've seen the excitement come back into the classrooms, the students. Tammy's right, every time you walk through the playground, they want to share with you what they're learning. But I've had kids come to my office and knock on my door wanting to actually have a meeting with me to tell me about a project that they want to start up, a club, an idea that they might have, but they've learned in the classroom. So they're actually coming and knocking on my door and wanting to share with me. So that just gives me, you know, great enthusiasm and great joy to see the love of learning come back into my area that I'm leading. So the fact that too, you know, relationships have been enhanced between the teachers, the relationships are stronger between the teachers and the students across campus, from primary to secondary. We have strengthened relationships, and all of these things happened without a plan, so to speak. It just evolved naturally. And so I suppose moving into next year, the move or the idea will be to how can we strengthen that and even spread that to a wider circle of people as we move into next year. How can we get some more of our secondary staff involved by simply doing the next dig, the first dig that's available next year. But then how important it will be for teachers like Rebecca, Monterey, Kelly, Caitlin, to keep sharing, because I think the more that we share, that's where the motivation comes from others to want to step into that place of unknown and try and experiment. And I think that's probably the key word, or the key way to approach this with the teachers, is to let them know this is an experiment. We give you permission to step outside the box, to try something new. But I am also hearing about how, even though it is an experiment and a way of changing our philosophy around our own pedagogical practices, I can hear how can we capture this learning and use what we can assess, whether it be through formative or summative assessment, while the students are engaged in the dig or the project-based learning. How can we use what we can capture to enhance our overall judgments of the students' capabilities? So, yeah, that's probably heaps.
And so what surprised you most as a leader to see what happened within the culture of your school?
I think what surprised me is how rapidly it happened. But this is, we've tried to implement other things, other initiatives in previous years, but how rapid people have taken this on board and just flown with it, and the experiences that are happening in all these classrooms throughout primary and into secondary in just a short space of time, you know, effectively 6 months. That's just amazed me.
And so what do you wonder about then, as you think about next year?
Next year, it is about broadening the number of people who have the same understanding of inquiry-based learning, and I think working with the team to really hone in on what is it that we're trying to achieve, making sure that everyone understands what's our common purpose here, why are we doing this, and then everything that we do is filtered through that lens so that everyone knows that this is what we're trying to achieve and we're all on board with that. So that's the big piece of work, I think, is really focusing on, while still experimenting, but having a focus on a few key aspects that we want to achieve next year that keeps us focused, keeps us aligned with how we can really enhance our pedagogical framework. And I think that's the key point, is how can we really get deep into that transfer of knowledge with students that's more than just taking a test. It is about how can we communicate and build those skills of our students to share their stories and be autonomous in their learning. And I just loved hearing Monterey say that our Year 7 Catalyst class just did a little video to welcome the Year 6 Catalyst class into next year. That stuff really excites me, because that's the students demonstrating this is what we could do to enhance the learning experiences of the students coming through. And when that's self-motivated, then we're on track to achieve a lot of good things at Woodcrest.
And how about for yourself personally as a leader? What did you learn about yourself as a leader through this process?
I think the one thing I did learn is, personally, I've always been the type of leader who may have not always waited for things to be all my ducks in a row, so to speak, before I moved forward. And I think what the dig has taught me, and having these regular meetings fortnightly has taught me, is that how important it is I can move quicker than waiting for all the ducks to be aligned. I can encourage that experimentation, but still bring everyone together on a more regular basis to ensure that we're still moving in at the same pace, if not even more rapidly moving along at that same pace. So I think that's probably the biggest learning as a leader for me personally, is just that shift in mindset from waiting to let's do it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Penny, and thank you for the wonderful team.
Thanks, Thompson. Okay. So are we going to say goodbye to everyone? So, bye, Caitlin.
Bye. Bye. Have a great summer and Merry Christmas.
See you later.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
And have a good Christmas.
Thank you. You too.